Hi, Holly.
Hi.
I am here with Holly, and she's going to be telling me her story about Jesus. Do you want to go ahead and just introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Holly Easterbrook. I am a longtime resident of the Placerville area. I have a family. I still have kids at home, aged 9 through 16. And yeah, we're just finding our way without my husband, following losing him. And we're just day by day finding our way with God's help.
When you were born, what kind of situation did God put you in?
I was born to two parents who were married. I'm the oldest of three sisters. Um, we lived in the country. My dad was a realtor. We were really blessed as far as just living in the country and always having animals and room to roam. And I had a pretty good childhood in a lot of ways, but also a pretty dysfunctional childhood in a lot of ways, as a lot of people I'm finding out. But God really preserved me and my sisters and protected us and sheltered us from um, a lot of things that could have gone wrong. And I feel like we had a pretty happy childhood given all things.
Did you go to church? Did you have some idea of God?
Yes. So my mom is a very godly woman, always has been my whole life. She taught us, from babies to love Jesus and read to us, and we knew our Bibles very well. We went to church every week. We were very involved in um, church activities, school activities. We also went to a Christian school. We were part of a club that was kind of like Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, but it was co-ed, and it was a lot of camping skills and stuff like that. That was also Christian. All of our friends were Christian as well. So yeah, our lives were completely based on the church and God.
Okay.
Um, that helped us be strong through some of the things we did experience. We knew that foundation of God and His love was there. Yeah. So I never ever felt alone in my life. I never felt without hope. I always knew whenever something would happen that I could turn to the Lord and pray. So yeah, thankful for that.
Well, Holly, a couple questions. Um, Boarding school. You lived in the U.S. and it's not normal. It's not a normal experience of growing up in the U.S.
Right.
Was there a reason that you were sent to boarding school?
Yeah. So I went to church school my whole life. We had a little country church school that it was right on the campus of our church, but it only went up to ninth grade.
Okay.
And so when I graduated from ninth grade, my parents were like, well, your options are homeschool or boarding school. Okay. We're not going to send you to public school. That was just their conviction.
Sure.
And so I was like, well, I'm not doing homeschool, so I guess it's boarding school. Those were my options.
What was your relationship with God like at that age or as you were growing up?
Yeah, so I did know the Lord. I was baptized at 14.
Okay. Which was right when you were sent off to boarding school or around?
No, sorry, I was younger. I was sorry, I was 12. Okay. That was seventh grade. And that was my own choice. Our pastor came to our school and gave us baptismal classes, and several of my friends and me decided to get baptized, and that definitely was what I wanted. So I did understand the gospel. I understood salvation. I understood having a relationship with the Lord. However, I think my faith was just not as strong as it needed to be sent off at that age. I just hadn't really fully developed my own value system. And I was very easily influenced by my friends. And so I arrived there, very innocent girl, very, intending to do everything the right way and follow all the rules and be good. And I did really well for the first year, but then the second year, gradually, I think my decisions followed more and more in the footsteps of my friends and the directions they were leading me. And I didn't have a very good mechanism for choosing friendships. And so I just kind of followed along with whoever was doing fun things, or I didn't really have a strong backbone. And so, yeah, I definitely got influenced negatively by being there. I was just very immature.
Sure.
So
Sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of how that went.
Yeah. So you touched on that your decision to get baptized was after a message that a pastor
Mm-hmm.
came to your school
Mm-hmm.
and did. And what was that process like for you? You know, this was something that was agreeable. It wasn't a big
Right,
change.
right. It was just sort of, I will say it was sort of the standard um, way things were done in our church was most kids got baptized around that age. Some a few younger, some a little bit older, but mostly around that age.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a typical thing to
It was a
do. It
normal
was, yeah,
expectation.
it was.
Yeah.
And I didn't have to be forced or pushed. It was
Sure.
definitely, my desire.
No.
Um, I think I always had a strong conscience and a strong sense that I was a sinner.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't news to me at 12. That was
Mm-hmm.
just something I was raised understanding that we're sinful humans and we need Jesus and, we need to be saved and we need to repent and we need to ask forgiveness. And so at that age is where I think I started to really grasp that I, in fact, was a sinner and I needed Jesus.
Yeah.
And that's something that I'm just so grateful that I was raised with that. It was never like something that I struggled against, like, oh, well, I'm not a sinner. I've heard some people really struggle with that concept.
Sure. Yeah.
I always knew that.
Yeah.
So it was just a matter of forgetting at times how much I needed the Lord, but I did know it.
Right. Right. What would you say in your relationship with him? What are just some hallmarks? Do you have some like little memories?
I remember my mom telling me, I don't remember this myself, but she said when I was 2 years old, there was a picture in a picture book of Jesus on the cross. And she said it struck her how much it struck me. She said I was just pointing at the picture and saying over and over, just noticing that he was on the cross and that he was bleeding and that he was hurting. And that made an impact on me at that age. And so apparently that was something that was just always in my heart.
There was a softness toward him.
Yeah. And then, because I was raised in the church, that way of life was just very normal to me. I would say that it's difficult not to take it for granted when you are raised, everyone around you is a Christian and all your friends are Christians and all their parents, and it's not a foreign thing at all. Right. I feel fortunate, but I also recognize that it is easy to take it for granted, and you have to have your own relationship with the Lord. Like, it's not enough to be raised in a Christian home or go to a Christian school or go to church. Like, you have to have your own relationship with the Lord. Right. And I do have that now, but it took some time to get there.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yes. So you, a culture and a softness towards the Lord, and so some good formation. And then when it became personal, when would you like to talk about when?
Well, I mean, so when I got pregnant at boarding school, it was definitely a screech to a stop moment in my life where it was like, this isn't what anyone had planned for me. This isn't what I intended. And now I was faced with the decision of, what do I do now, and which direction does my life take? Went away to boarding school at 14, ended up getting pregnant there and having my first child at 16. So that's kind of when I suddenly grew up at the age of 16. And thankfully, my family was supportive, and I received all the support I needed to continue high school and stay living at home and have as normal of a life as possible. And I'm so grateful for that, because a lot of teen moms find themselves in really horrible situations, and that didn't happen to me. So I'm grateful that I was able to bring my son into the world, and he lived with me and with my mom. My parents had gotten divorced when I was pregnant. And so, for the first few years of his life, he lived under my mom's roof with me and was part of that same household that I was raised in, of faith. And so he had that foundation too. But I remember having to grapple with this, needing to repent, realizing that I'd made this mistake, and I needed to now turn back to the Lord, that I had sort of stepped away from my value system and my belief system that I was raised with, and I'd made these decisions. And, if I wanted my son to be raised, as a Christian and with faith, I was going to need to turn back to the way that I had sort of left. And I remember deciding to get baptized again at 16. So I had my son dedicated at the same time as I was rebaptized. And that was sort of a rededication of my life to the Lord at that time.
Yeah. And how would you say Jesus was real to you at that time?
Well, the weight of raising a child, it's one thing to have your own relationship with the Lord, and then to realize that you're responsible for another human's understanding of God, and their relationship with God is going to develop based on how you show God to them. And that was very serious to me. And I remember just wanting, to protect him and shelter him and just give him all the love I could. And same thing as my mom did for me. I brought him to church and, had him in church school. And I think that being a mom is one of those things in my life that has kept me closer to God than anything else, because it's that I'm not in this world alone. I'm responsible for these other people. And, it's up to me to show God's grace to them and reveal God to them. So that has been a blessing in my life and helped my character development for sure, just to, have that sense of responsibility. Yeah.
What was important for you to reveal to them about who Jesus was?
I think just that you're never alone, that God's grace is always there for us. There's no mistake so big that he doesn't love us anymore or that he turns away. He's always waiting for us to turn back to him. And I always sense that about God. Even, no matter any mistakes or backsliding that I've ever done, I've always known that he's just right there. It's up to me to turn back towards him. And that has never left me. And it's that knowledge that has gotten me through the last couple of years more than anything.
Yeah. So in our timeline, you're talking about becoming pregnant at 16, having your son, living back at home from not boarding school, and raising your son.
Yes.
Taking him to church. Tell me from there what.
Yeah. So at 19, I moved out into my own apartment. My mom got remarried, and it was time for me to spread my wings. And so I got my cosmetology license and started working, doing hair. And it was like, okay, time to get your own apartment. So at 19, I did. I moved out and got a little studio apartment. Ben was 3 at the time. And it was just several years of growing up and learning how to be responsible and pay the bills and, get, dinner on the table and keep the house clean and, all those things. And those years were, I worked very hard. Ben was in daycare a lot. But we did well. We did really well for the two of us. And he was a sweet little kid, and we had a great time. Because I was so young, I was still growing up myself.
Sure.
And so I wish I could say that I was always an awesome mom, that I was always responsible, and that, I didn't make any mistakes parenting, and that I dated wonderful men, and, I made a lot of mistakes. I wasn't always, my priorities weren't always in order. I wasn't always great with money. I dated
still a child.
I dated some people I shouldn't have dated. And we were definitely in some pretty sketchy situations at times. I didn't have a car, so we rode the bus everywhere. It was just a challenging time, but I grew up. I mean, I matured, and we matured together, and we made it through. You know, I wish I could say that I didn't backslide from God, but I did. I definitely always knew he was there, and I kept sort of one foot in the church and one foot in the world, trying to do both. And it doesn't work so well. And so I definitely teetered on the edge there at times. But I think that my son had that foundation of knowing the Lord and who he is, and that he was for us. And so when we would go through rough times, or I would be, you know, far from the Lord, we never forgot, you know, that he was there, and we always found our way back to him. You know, if it was a matter of, you know, being in a scary situation where, you know, we needed to pray for safety, or needed some money, or, you know, needed help in some way, our church was there. So many times I would come home and there would be a box of food on the porch, or a card from a church member, or there was this kind couple that would, I didn't have a car. They would take us to church whenever we needed a ride. They would call and say, "Do you want us to come pick you up?" And we would go. So, you know, I definitely didn't abandon my faith. It was just a challenging time of trying to keep a hold on it. Really.
Okay, so you're 19, you have a 3-year-old, and you're cosmetologist, and growing up and maturing in a safe, loving community that was just consistent and dependable.
So thankful for the church and the school that my son went to. That just kind of kept us, you know, we weren't always following what we were supposed to be doing, but we always knew that we could turn to them for help. And we did. And we had some really good mentors and people that were just always there when we needed them. And then gradually, as I got older and got more mature, I started making better and better decisions. I remember sort of my brain, like, going from, you know, what's fun and what do I feel like doing right now, to more thinking more long term and having long term plans and goals. And I went back to school. I wanted to be a nurse, and so I started taking prerequisites at the community college for nursing school. And I got a different job where I was able to go to school in the morning and work in the afternoon and the evening. And so that started to go into my early 20s. And I was still, you know, single and dating, but I was dating better options for me.
Making better choices.
Yes. And started consistently going back to church again, and really, you know, making an effort to live a lifestyle that was in alignment with my values. So over time, that looked different than it had when I was 19. So I'm happy to say that. And then when I was working at that new job and going to school, I ended up meeting my husband that I then married after a year of dating. So, you know, God really just kind of kept a hold on me, you know, didn't let go of me, kept me from destroying my life. I definitely made some bad decisions, but because of the community that we were in and the people that cared about us, we were never too far from where we needed to be. So I'm just grateful that we ended up meeting Ryan and getting married, and Ben was 10 years old when I married Ryan.
Okay.
I think in those early years, it was all kind of, you know, church and family was all kind of, it was all one thing. Like I had faith, but I don't think I'd ever experienced something that really stretched my faith to where I had a hard time believing. Like I just always believed.
Okay.
And God's goodness was apparent to me, you know, throughout my life up to that point. I had never really had anything happen that rocked my faith, or where I actually thought, oh, is God actually here? Can I actually trust God? That came later on. But I had the foundation for sure.
Okay. And then Ryan, you married him, and you have a 10-year-old son. And what did you have a life together that you both sought the Lord together, or?
Yeah, we had a similar experience, actually. So the area where we grew up, we were the same denomination. We just happened to be the same denomination. Mm-hmm. We grew up in Southern Cali. He grew up in Southern California. I grew up in Central, but I ended up in Southern California. Okay. And that's where we met. And we had the same background of school and church and very similar lifestyles and similar upbringings, and knew a lot of the same people, and just kind of had the same story, like of our childhood. So it was cool when we met and started dating that we understood each other's lingo.
Yes.
There was no explaining, different customs or, things that we do in our church. It was all, you get it too.
Yes.
So that was cool. But I would say that we both had a lot of growth to do in forming a personal relationship with God. He had faith, he was brought up with faith. So was I, but I don't think he'd really ever experienced anything that stretched his faith either.
Yeah.
And so it was sort of something we knew when we were dating. We want a Christian home. We want to raise our kids in the church, but having that personal, very close walk with the Lord was something that we both recognized that we needed more of. Yeah. And I think together we desired to seek that together in our marriage. Yeah. So we definitely grew in our faith, both as a family and individually throughout the early years of our marriage. Got married in 2005. I was, I hadn't started nursing school yet. He was in dental school. And so the first couple years of our marriage was just school. He was in the middle of dental school. I started my nursing program right after we got married. So, the first 3 years of our marriage was just school, work and school. Yeah, no money, no time. But those were, sweet days. Ben was 10, so he would tag along with us, whatever we'd be, going on a hike, Ben would come with us. Going out to dinner, Ben would come with us. Just the three of us. And then in 2008, Ryan graduated from dental school. I graduated from nursing school. And we had decided, early on that we wanted to leave Southern California and come up to Northern California. Okay. So we ended up here in Placerville. Okay. And we bought our first home here in Placerville in the summer of 2009.
Okay.
And I had just had our first daughter. Okay. And we just had a very those years were idyllic. We ended up on a couple of acres, a couple miles from town, not too far from the church and his work, but far enough out that we would look outside and see trees and deer and turkeys and not cars and houses. And that's what we'd always wanted. So I was a stay-at-home mom for a long time.
Not doing nursing?
I did work as a nurse during my pregnancy with Riley.
Okay.
And sort of per diem throughout the first couple years of being a mom. But once we had our third baby, I was like, I need to be home 100%. Okay. So up until then, I'd work maybe 1 to 2 shifts a week.
Okay.
Late night shifts.
Yeah,
I could say yes or no.
Okay.
They'd call and say, "Do you want to work a shift?" And I'd say yes or no, depending.
Okay.
But
so at Marshall or
I worked in long-term care.
Okay.
Yeah. So nursing homes. It was fulfilling. I do miss aspects of that, but I remember just how hard it was to have. I'd be up in the night nursing. And then I'd get up and go to an early shift, or I'd be home all day with the baby and then go to a late shift and get home in the middle of the night and then nurse throughout the night and start over again the next day. It was just really hard.
Yeah.
And so I remember telling Ryan, like, I need to be home. I need to be home with the kids. And so that was just kind of an understanding that while they were little, that's what I needed and they needed. And so I was very blessed to be able to do that. And then I started homeschooling when Riley was in preschool, and that was kind of.
And you had a boy,
yes,
and 2 girls.
So boom, boom, boom. We had 3, all 2 years apart.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 4 kids all together in the home.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, the first 3 were 2 years apart, and then we thought we were done.
Okay.
And then after 3 years of being done, we had a surprise baby. So
Okay.
yes, 4 altogether. Yes. And by then, Ben was, off to college.
Okay.
So he was, he was in the home till he was 18, and then he went off to college.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I had the 4 little ones.
Okay. And your husband was a dentist?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. He bought a practice in Placerville and was, he was an associate for a couple years, and then that dentist retired and Ryan took over the practice. And then after a few years, he decided he wanted to move closer to town, move his practice closer to town. So we found another dentist to associate with and moved his practice. The first one was in Diamond Springs, and then he moved it into Placerville. So that's kind of where things were up till 2 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
What changed 2 years ago?
So I still don't know exactly what went wrong. Our lives were pretty much exactly what we'd always wanted. He was working, as a dentist. By then our kids were in school, all of them. I homeschooled the first 2 years for the 3 older kids.
Okay.
And then they would go to school. So I would homeschool for kindergarten and first grade. Then that one would go to school, and I'd start homeschooling the next one.
Gotcha.
So I had a stretch of about 6 years of homeschooling.
Yeah.
And then Wilson, the baby, the plan had been to homeschool him, but got married. He was my social kid, and he really wanted to go to school with his friends for kindergarten. So we sent him to the same little church school that the older 3 were going to for kindergarten. And I started volunteering at the school just so I could be there and be involved, because I missed that. In homeschooling, you're always with your kids, and that was a big change to all of a sudden have them all 4 in school.
Right.
So I started volunteering there, and life was good. I actually started working back at a salon after years and years of being home. I was like, well, I can go back to doing hair, and I can work my way into that and build up the business, but just one day a week while the kids were in school. And I did a lot of volunteer work for the church, the school. I was on the school board and the church board, and led out on the kids ministry team. And just, life was exactly what we wanted, just freedom to, I'd go on field trips with the kids, and we were very involved with church, with the community. Everything seemed to be going really well. And then there was always this undercurrent, though, of stress about money. Okay. I will say, living on one income is not easy, and especially when you have your kids in private school, it's expensive, and it's expensive to live in general, and have 4 kids. And then COVID happened, and his business definitely suffered from that year. But it was, to me, the stress was always this manageable thing, that it was a part of your life. You have your finances, you have your friendships, you have, your hobbies, it was compartmentalized, and it was, to me, it was not something that hung over me and kept me awake at night, but apparently it was keeping him awake at night. I just didn't know. He didn't really talk about it. He'd mention every now and then that, things didn't look great, but that he had it under control. And, it never seemed like it was something I needed to worry about. I felt like, well, I'm doing my part with budgeting and, being responsible. And so we'll be okay. We'll be tight while the kids are young, but we'll be okay. But it was more of a worry to him than I realized. And so I remember the last couple of months leading up to the beginning of his anxiety and panic that he struggled with at the end. I remember him saying more and more that things weren't looking good, and that he was really worried about money. And I just kept saying, do I need to do anything? Is there anything I can do? And he just kept saying, it's all part of the business, and it's not really anything you can do. I just need to figure out, I need to, get my quarterly report from my CPA, and we'll figure out where we stand. And so that's kind of
He wasn't saying
He
"We could
wasn't.
pull the kids out of
No,
school. He didn't.
no,
He didn't have practical stuff.
no,
Yeah.
no. It was just kind of like, well, no, there's nothing you can really do.
Mhm.
So then
But you're sensing something different from him.
I'm sensing that he's more and more stressed.
Mhm.
And I'm just, I'm doing what I can to try to reassure him that God's got us and that, we've always been okay and we'll always be okay. And we're being careful.
Mhm.
And that's that I was as supportive as I could be.
Sure.
But again, he wasn't being very,
You had no idea.
yeah, he wasn't being very open with me. Not that he was trying to hide anything. I think he just, honestly, our whole marriage, he was very can-do guy. He was always very calm.
Mhm.
He was always just steady. He was not a big worrier. He was not a talker. He was just a doer. If something needed to be done, he'd do it. And he didn't complain, and he didn't really even mention issues. Like if something broke down on the car, he would just take it and get it fixed. He didn't bellyache about it. He just, I always knew he had everything under control, and I didn't really have to worry about things with him ever. It just always felt like Ryan's got us. He's got it under control. If there was a problem, he'd let me know.
Yeah.
And then I remember one day that just all changed. It was the first day of school for my kids, 2023, August 16, and I took them to school. I remember it was a half day, I think, and so I was just kind of hanging around in town for a couple hours waiting for school to get out early. And I got a phone call from him in the afternoon. I was in the car bringing them all back home, and he let me know that he had had a panic attack at work, and he had been working on a patient, and he'd had to leave and go to the doctor and get some medication for the anxiety, and that he was going to come home and try to rest, and he would talk to me later. And then he let me know that he had an appointment with his CPA, I think the next day, to try to figure out where the finances were with the practice. And it took me aback. I was like, okay, that's different.
Did he say it was a panic attack?
He said he had had a panic attack at work. And that had never happened before. And he was not a panic type of person. I wouldn't say he was, I don't think anyone that knew Ryan would ever say he was a super relaxed guy. He was a mellow guy, and he was a quiet guy. He was always watching what was going on. You could tell he was thinking and not saying what he was thinking. He was always noticing everything. But relaxed was probably not the term I would use to describe him. He was just more quiet. He was quiet. There was a lot going on under the surface. But the panic was definitely not something I'd ever seen in him before, or the outright anxiety. I had seen worry at times. I had heard him, say things that showed worry, but not extreme anxiety or panic. So that definitely was different. And then we just experienced the next 10 weeks of him having an extreme panic disorder, and we never found a way to treat his anxiety, and it just got worse and worse and worse. And it started out being all about money. He ended up meeting with his CPA and heard from her that his business was not bringing in as much as it needed to cover our personal and his business expenses. And he was going through his cash reserves, and we were going to be in a position where he was going to run out of money if he didn't change something drastically. And so she was basically like, you need to pull the kids out of private school. You need to sell the house. You need to move in with your parents, and you need to just work for a couple of years and get yourselves back into a position where you're, stable again.
Sure.
I hadn't known things were that bad. I don't think he'd known things were that bad. I think that he had been trying to manage his own finances with the practice on his own, and really probably was in over his head. And that was shocking.
Yeah, when he met with his CPA, was he communicative about the state of things?
with me.
Yes.
So when he met with her, his partner, his dental partner, also met with him, and they worked out a plan to have Ryan work for the practice for a paycheck, just so that we could still have some money coming in, but that their merger would just pause. They were in the process of merging the two practices.
Okay.
So he did come home and explain that to me, and he explained that we were going to have to pull the kids out of school. Yeah. And I think he was thinking that I was going to break down and lose it over that, because I think in his mind that was the worst possible thing that could happen. Yeah. And while I was disappointed and sad and shocked over that news, I immediately just went into problem solving mode and supportive mode. Like, okay, this is what it's going to take to get us, stable again, whatever it takes. We're a family, we'll get through it. Yeah. And we're selling the house. Okay, we're selling the house. I'm all in. Like, this is what God is clearly, this is how I felt in the moment. I felt like I've been praying for God to show me what's next for our family. And this is what's next. This is the next step. This is something we have to step out in faith, and maybe he has something bigger and better for us down the road, but we have to get through this little, we have to get through this little part here where it's going to take trusting him. But, he's been with us all along. He'll continue to be with us. And as I'm saying those words to him, I could tell that it reassured him a lot to hear me say that. And he was so grateful that I didn't react with like anger or frustration or disappointment. Like, you could just tell that he felt like, okay, she's, being supportive of this transition that we're going to have to go through. And I think that helped him in the moment, feel like we were going to get through it. I do think in the beginning, he thought we were going to get through it. Yeah. And, we prayed together right there. I remember him saying, let's pray. We haven't prayed enough, but I really want to ask God to, be with us right now. Right. And I remember him praying out loud. And, I just immediately was like, okay, this is what we're doing. God is leading. God's in charge. God's got this. Yeah. And so I immediately started, making lists of things to sell and going through all of our stuff and packing. And, I was about to talk to the school and figure out if we should pull the kids out. And then Ryan was like, well, maybe let's just wait a little bit. Let's talk to my parents. Let's figure it out. Maybe if we move in with them, we can still keep the kids in school. We were figuring out those details. Sure. But he couldn't work. And his anxiety just debilitated him. And I remember we were talking about it, and he was like, I just need these meds to kick in. And then once my anxiety, gets under control, then I'll go back to work and I'll work hard and we'll get back, we'll be okay. And that was the plan. That was the plan. The CPA said, you just need to work and that will solve all your problems because you make a lot of money and you're productive and, you just need to buckle down and work. And then that never happened.
Off of 2020 and a reduced, customer.
It was more that, I feel like the patients were coming back, but I think it was more that he had to dip into the reserves to get through that initial dip. Yeah. And he was just starting to bounce back from that. Okay. But his anxiety made it so that he couldn't practice. His hands were shaking. He couldn't figure out treatment planning. He would paralyze with anxiety, and he'd freeze up and he couldn't figure out. He couldn't. Work. Yeah. And so he couldn't go back to work. And he took 3 weeks off. Yeah. And, meanwhile, no money's coming in because he's not producing. And I remember just, begging God and praying that, please heal his anxiety, because we know that you have a plan for us. And we know that part of that plan is that we need to, we need to step into whatever you have for us next, but we don't know what that is. And until you open other doors, this is where you have us right now. And so Ryan needs to work and take care of our family. And so we're praying for that. And every day I'm waking up and asking him, did you sleep? Did you
Mhm.
sleep?
Mhm.
No, he's not sleeping. He's not getting
Oh.
sleep night after night after night.
Oh.
And so this went on, and on and on. And after about a month,
Did he have any relief with the medication? It never like kicked in
never,
like you hoped
never,
it
never
would.
did. And they
And
tried
it wasn't something that he was taking previous to this
no,
initial panic
no. This is
attack.
antidepressants they gave him to help with the anxiety so that he could
Yeah.
sleep and have a more stable mood, and nothing ever stabilized.
And did I'm sorry,
Yeah,
I'm just
no, it's
asking
okay.
the details. So like did they follow up and go, "Hey, how's this working?" And
Well, part of the frustrating thing is that it was
yeah.
his family practice doctor that gave him these meds. And
Okay.
they told us, well, to get into psychiatry, to actually be treated by a psychiatrist, it's self referral. We don't refer you. You just call
Okay.
and you make an appointment for yourself. So when we made him an appointment, the soonest they could get him in was October. And we're talking from the middle of August
Yeah.
to October.
Yeah.
And that was
Yeah.
far too long.
Yeah.
And so he was
Not
just,
to sleep.
yeah, he was
Yeah.
just being managed by his family practitioner. And they tried a few different combinations of meds and changed the dose, but, nothing was working.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, he had a couple different visits to the ER where, we were desperate. It's like his
And
meds aren't working and he's not sleeping and he's losing a ton of weight because he's not eating.
Mhm.
And it started to, in the beginning, I would say I was upbeat. I had a lot of faith. I
Sure.
believed that actually this was God showing us that he had something different for us.
Sure.
That maybe the path that we thought our lives were going to follow was going to take a different turn, and that was okay with me.
Mhm.
Like I said, I had been praying in recent months. I had been praying every morning. I would go for this long walk and I would just pray, God, this is wonderful where you have me, but what else is there? I know that you have something. I just felt like things were so good and so
Mhm.
easy, and I felt so blessed. I felt like there's something else, God. There's something else that you have for us. What is
Mhm.
it?
Mhm.
And so when this happened, in a sense, I was almost like, oh, this is what God has been preparing us for.
Right. Just
This is,
that it was part of his leading was to
yes,
shift things.
yes, we're going to sell the house. Maybe we're going to go be missionaries. Maybe,
Mhm.
something that we never imagined is going to be God's will. But, I don't know what it is until he shows us.
Right.
And so after weeks of him not getting better, it just started to, I'm asking God, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Why aren't you healing him? And he kept getting worse, and he even tried to go back to work. Went back to work, I think, for like 2 or 3 weeks, because we had this long talk and I was like, well, you're not getting better, but you're not getting worse. Do you think that you could just go back to work? And, even though you're feeling anxious and you're worried about money, do you think you could just, you're not feeling good staying at home. You're more worried
Right.
about,
Right.
money sitting here, not working. Maybe you could just go back and try.
Sure.
So he went back to work and tried to work on patients, and he did as best as he could, but he just kept having these panic attacks, and eventually he ended up back in the ER again, and they hospitalized him. And so that was October, first week of October.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I thought, okay, this is where he needs to be. He needs to be in the hospital. We've tried everything. We've tried therapy. We've tried, the meds. He goes for long walks. We're doing all the things.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was relieved that he ended up in the hospital, because I thought, this is where he needs to be. They'll have stronger medicines. They'll have techniques that,
Right.
that I can't do
Right.
at home. And he was in the hospital for a week. And I remember,
Did he get some sleep then?
yeah, so they changed his meds immediately when he went into the hospital. They put him on new meds and changed the doses of the meds that he was on. And the first couple of days, nothing changed. And then I remember I was able to talk to him on the phone every day while he was in there. And I remember about halfway through the week,
or?
I wasn't allowed to visit.
Okay. Was it like a 51?
Yeah, this is like a, well, it wasn't,
Yeah.
he wasn't, he could leave at will.
Uh-huh.
It wasn't like he was locked up against his will,
Mm-hmm.
but it was a place like that where there were people like that, so they didn't allow visitors.
Okay.
And so I remember like about halfway through the week, I was talking to him on the phone and just missing him, just really missing him, and telling them that I missed him. And I remember hearing just this hopelessness in his voice, that he didn't sound like he thought he was getting better. And that was definitely different, because up until then we had always talked about, when we get through this, you know, it was an in sickness and in health kind of thing. Like, he knew that he was not doing well, but he knew that he could lean on me, and we believed that he was going to get through it.
Sure.
And then on that phone call, I just remember hearing that he didn't seem like he was believing that he was going to get better. And I think it was so hard for him being in there and just being away from the family and not feeling like he was able to do anything. Yeah. And I think it was tearing his heart out. But then after another couple of days, I remember talking to him, and he said very calmly, I think my anxiety is starting to go away. And I was like, well, hallelujah. I mean, that's huge, because it was the first time in over 2 months that he'd said that.
Right.
And I was just like, well, maybe the meds are finally kicking in, that none of the meds have ever worked until now, but maybe they've finally got you on the right medication and the right dosage, and you're going to be okay. And he's like, I guess so. And so after another couple days, you know, they would, you know, check in with him and assess him every day. And they assessed that he was ready to come home with some, you know, treatment plans in place. And so he came home after a week of being there, and he was very calm and very not anxious. So I thought that was the end of that chapter, and that we were on to the next chapter. But he was only home for 9 days, and then he took his own life. And it was a complete shock to me and everyone, because he had seemed very calm and not anxious, and not quite like himself, but closer than he'd been in a very long time. And I thought we were through with that. So yeah, so there we were, October 23, 2023.
Sorry.
It was a phone call no one ever wants to get. And I mean, it was a long day. It wasn't like I got a phone call that he was gone. It was like I got a phone call that he was missing. Okay. And then there was a whole long day of looking for him, and then they found him at the end of the day. So
he wasn't at home.
No, he got up. It was a Monday morning, and he got up Monday morning and was going back to work. I think so. He had come home from the hospital on Friday, and he'd worked the Monday after he came home from the hospital, he had gone back to work. So it was 1 week after he had gone back to work. He had worked for a full week already. Okay. And I had asked him, I had kept checking in with him, how'd it go? Yeah. Fine, no issues. And so I was relieved. I was like, okay, you're back to work. You're working on patients. The meds are working. Right. This is good. Yeah. I really, truly thought we were through the woods. Sure. And that Monday morning, I was not doing well. I was starting to really have physical effects of all the stress that we'd been through the last 2 months. And my adult son was also going through a really, really hard time in his personal life. So I was very much turning my attention to helping him and not so much worrying about Ryan. I felt like, okay, I don't have to worry about him anymore. He's good. And I need to turn my attention now to this other family member. And I was feeling the physical effects of the stress. I myself was not sleeping well. Right. I was not eating. My stomach was a mess. Yeah. And so when I got the phone call that he had not shown up at work, it totally threw me completely for a loop because I was like, okay, wait a second. He left for work. He took the boys to school. Why is he not at work? I'm worrying about this other thing. And now I'm getting a phone call at 8:15 that he hadn't shown up to work.
Yeah.
So then that started the whole process of having to file a missing persons report and going out and looking for him. Yeah.
So you get a call that he didn't come in to work, and you said your mind and your attention was towards your adult son.
Mm-hmm.
Had it been early, starting that day, or a couple days before?
That had been going on for probably 2 weeks, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, he had started his own personal life had really was dive, and he was.
So while your husband was still in the hospital.
Yes.
And then the week after, everything seems to be going good. He's functioning at work. He's sleeping.
Eating again.
He's eating, and you're checking in with him, and he's good. And
in fact, the day before, it had been a rainy day, and we had been home all day with the kids on Sunday playing board games and watching movies, and it had been a really good day with the kids. And so that was a gift. That was it was really a sweet day. And in fact, the night before when we went to bed, he said, "I had a really good day today."
Oh, yeah. Do you think he was intentional in having a good day? I do think so.
Knowing him as well as I do, I think that, I mean, I have my theories about what he was thinking. Of course, we'll never know, but
he didn't leave a note or anything.
There was no note. My theory was that he did not want to be on all those medications and be not himself.
Sure.
And he, I think, had started to realize that he wasn't going to go back to the way he was before without the help of a lot of medication and therapy. And to him, that was just too much of a burden. And it was too much of a burden in his mind to put on me and the kids. And I think he just thought,
he's going to handle it himself.
Yeah. And then we wouldn't have to worry about money anymore because he had life insurance, and that would erase the need to sell the house, and life could continue on for me and the kids in the lifestyle that he wanted us to have all along, which is, you know, with them in school, and all the debt would go away.
So you are starting to feel the effects of everything that your husband had just been through, getting him healthy again. Also just the effects of your caring concern for your oldest child. And it wasn't the best of mornings, even before you found out he was missing. And, you know, I don't know what that looks like for you. Where did you get to a spot where you stopped and said, Jesus?
Oh, yeah. In fact, I was, I think I had just gotten off the phone with my mom, and we prayed together for my son. Because I was like, I need to figure out how to help him. And my mom was like, well, let's pray together. And then, you know, you make the phone calls that you need to make. And so we had just gotten off the phone. I just finished praying with my mom because that had been a lifeline throughout the whole illness, you know, Ryan's whole illness. Prayer had been the main lifeline that I felt helped me from not getting anxious. Every time I would start to feel anxiety rise in me, I would just pray. And I had a note in my phone of all the scriptures that people were sending me or that I would find, or, you know, when I'd read on my own. And I just kept a note of all the verses, and I would just go in that note and read the verses over and over and claim them over my family.
Sure.
And so, I definitely, you know, prayed throughout this whole time when he was sick. And we'd pray together too. Sometimes he couldn't pray out loud, and he would just say, can you pray?
Sure.
I love when you pray.
And so as little or as much as you want to go into that day, everything changes at 8:15, and you're soon filing a missing persons report. And was it the same day that he was found?
Yes. So apparently he had dropped the boys off at school and then had turned around and headed back towards our gated community. And there was a turnoff with a creek about a quarter mile from our gate. and that is where his car was found.
Okay.
And I actually located his phone on Google Locations looking for him about 2 hours later.
Okay.
And that's where law enforcement ended up beginning their search where his car was found. It was just found off the main road at the trailhead where this creek was, and I ended up there too, and some friends, and that's where the search began. And it started as a sheriff's search. They had drones in there and a helicopter, and they exhausted their resources after about 4 hours, and they basically said it's a volunteer search now. Like we can't find him. So
is it getting dark or
no?
Okay.
They just they said they had exhausted their resources, and what I didn't realize was they knew there was a weapon involved.
Okay.
Because when they called to tell me they were beginning the search for him after I had filed the missing persons report, they asked me, does he have guns? And I said, yes, he does. And they said, can you go check and see if they are all there?
Yeah.
And my husband's father was with me at the time. He had come to be with me as soon as I told him Ryan was missing. And he knew how many guns there were and how many there should have been and what type they were.
Okay.
And he knew that there was one missing. He looked right in the box and said, oh yeah.
And did you know?
It's missing. I hadn't known it was missing.
Yeah.
Later on, looking back that morning, yes, he had put something in the car.
Yeah.
And he had told the boys before they got in the car, he said, don't get in the car. I'm warming it up.
Okay.
And he said to me, he said, don't let them get in the car. I'm warming the car up. So that apparently had been when he had gone and put the gun in the car. But again, I was so not focusing on him.
Yeah.
I was really in knots about other things, and I wasn't paying attention. But now looking back, I remember. So as soon as I told the sheriff that there was a gun missing, they went into, okay, this is a different type of search than if there wasn't a weapon involved. If there wasn't a weapon involved, if someone was just lost out in the woods, they would have brought in dogs.
Yeah.
But they didn't bring in dogs, and they won't bring in dogs when there's a weapon involved. Okay. So I didn't know that, and they didn't tell me that, because I think they were trying not to worry me.
Sure. Yeah, so you're on site when the sheriff decides to call off the search for that point, and tell me how. What are you praying? What are you thinking? How are you?
I was in a state of. It's a very surreal place to be. I can't imagine a stranger scenario than that day. I was sitting in a camping chair next to the trail on a road that I drive past 4 times a day.
Yeah.
Just sitting there by my husband's car, waiting for him to walk out of the woods, because I thought in my mind, there is an explanation.
Yeah.
Ryan would not do anything crazy, and he's going to come walking out of the woods, and he's going to be like, why is everybody here? Why is everybody? I'm fine.
Sure.
And that's where I was at mentally. A couple of my close friends came and sat there at the trail with me, and we were just talking. And I think everybody there knew the seriousness of the situation. And I was just, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. I can't even say I was really like praying that hard, because I just thought, we had been praying.
Right.
But in my mind, that moment didn't have any special significance. It was just, he must have needed to go for a walk and figure some stuff out, and he'll be okay. My pastor was there. It was very surreal. At 2:30, they called off the search, the sheriffs did, and our church members formed a volunteer search party. And they planned to start searching at about 4:30 p.m. Okay. So at that time, I was instructed, you need to go home and you need to wait. Okay. And a couple of friends came with me and were with me at the house. And
the kids too?
No, the kids had gone to school that day. Okay. And they had been picked up by friends.
Okay.
So they were not with me.
Okay. And the
search was called off at 2:30.
Okay.
That's about when I went home, and the kids were not with me at the house. So I was just there at the house, me and a couple of friends.
Okay.
So I didn't have to worry about the kids, and they were fine. I didn't have to worry about them coming home or anything. But in my mind was just go home and wait for news, and maybe he'll show up at the house. Maybe, maybe he parked the car and went for a walk even further down the road, and he'll come from the other direction. Like, we don't know where he is. He had left his phone in the car, but he could have been anywhere.
Right.
And then gradually, I would say throughout the afternoon, my mental and emotional state got more and more anxious, more worried, more resigned that the news was not going to be good. Because in my mind, like, I know my husband, he's not going to sit in the dark by a creek with no phone in the cold, not having eaten, and wait to be found if he's alive. So as it got further and further towards evening and it got dark, my hopes started to slip away. Yeah. And then we got the knock on the door at about 9 p.m. So it was a long afternoon of waiting. And I mean, we looked all over the house for clues and didn't find anything, no letter. So it was a pretty quiet and it was a pretty sad couple of hours just sitting on the couch there waiting for the knock at the door at the end.
Yeah. And the kids were elsewhere?
Yes. So they got picked up from school by friends and they spent the night. Actually, I think my daughters got picked up by their uncle and they had been staying at my in-laws during the week throughout Ryan's illness because that way they could their school, I didn't go into this in the beginning, but their school was further down the hill than the boys' school. They went to school in Sacramento, and so managing the carpool would have been too much for me when Ryan was sick because I had to take care of him. And so they were staying at their grandparents, and that way their grandparents took them to school every day. So that's where they were. They were actually with Grandma and Grandpa. And then the boys got picked up by a friend and they were going to spend the night with her.
So throughout this time just of his illness and you're sensing, oh God, you're still leading, you're shifting our circumstances. Even the day of, you're like, he's gonna wonder why everyone's gathered here and just waiting, and then and then there's a shift in circumstances, not the kind that necessarily God was leading, but he was present. And how did Jesus reveal himself to you in the aftermath of?
Mostly he revealed himself to me through the love and care of our community. From the beginning, when Ryan first got sick up until the present, really, it's just been a constant surrounding by our church of just love and support and prayers. When Ryan first got sick, the word trickled out little by little that we were selling the house and that we were going through some stuff, and we got meals and cards and people, offering to take the kids and do things with them, and taking things off my plate so that I could take care of Ryan. And that just continued on, and I was able to fully grieve and be with my kids and just take all the time I needed to process what had happened. It was a horrific, shocking thing that our family endured. And as soon as within a week, the school had completely just enveloped us with care. I mean, from, picking up the kids and taking them wherever they needed to go, to, like I said, bringing us meals. They had a vigil at the church for my husband the night after he was found, and the entire church, hundreds of people, showed up and had candles and were praying for me. I wasn't even there. I was too devastated to show up, but a friend did drive me through the parking lot just to see how many cars were there, because it made me feel very loved to see how many people were there praying for my husband and me. And it was incredible. It was incredible how much people cared and just loved on the kids and me. The first time that we went to church after it happened, which was, so he died on a Monday, we came to church on Saturday, and there had been a collection for the kids just to show them love, and there was 4 big baskets, one for each of them, filled with stuffed animals and blankets and gift cards and treats, and just, I mean, people wanted to love us tangibly, and that is how God showed up in the beginning.
Yes.
Because I couldn't think.
Yeah.
I couldn't talk.
Yeah.
I couldn't pray.
Yeah.
All I could do was just absorb the love that people were showering on us and try to process what had happened, because it was so shocking. Yeah. And people prayed, for me, came and prayed over me and for me, and I cried, and that's how God showed up.
Yeah. It's lovely. Yeah.
And then gradually, I started to, process what it meant for our family and what to do now. And, we had to make a lot of hard decisions. We had listed the house for sale while he had been ill. And then I immediately yanked it off the market as soon as he died, because I was like, I can't do this right now. Right. Maybe I'll end up selling it down the road, but right now I just need to be here with my kids, and maybe I won't sell it after all. Maybe I'll just stay here. And I needed to think about it.
Yeah.
And so life just kind of stopped for a few weeks, and we just sat in it and tried to figure out what next. People loved on my kids. I didn't have to cook a meal for well over a month.
Yeah.
And then, gradually, I think I started to figure out what I thought Ryan would have wanted us to do.
Yeah.
And what I wanted to do, and make some plans. And I ended up deciding to sell the house. And I wanted to get a fresh start and just get closer to my girls' school, so that I could so I could have them at home with me again, and fully participate in being a mom again. It had been really hard having them live with their grandparents for 2 months. I cried every Sunday night when their grandpa would come and pick them up and take them back to their house. I would just cry, to have our family split apart like that was really hard. And now with Ryan gone, I was like, I just want all my kids under one roof.
Yeah.
So, gradually I began to pick up the pieces and figure out what to do next. And God was he was just there quietly all along. Right. It wasn't something where I turned to him now. It was like he'd been there all along, and I'd been hanging on to him all along. And he knew that I was overwhelmed with, grief and sorrow, and that I didn't have words to pray.
Right.
But,
His presence.
His presence. And I had those scriptures, and I immediately began writing. It's not something that I've really ever done other than journaling, but I immediately started writing poetry. I started writing poetry the night Ryan died. I wrote him a very long poem that I ended up reading at his memorial, and I've written ever since. And it's my way of processing, and I write to God, and I write things to Ryan that he'll never read, and I do that. And so that's another way that God has helped me heal, is just giving me that outlet.
Yes.
that I can share. And some of the things I do share that I write, and some of them I don't share.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, God, it was like, of course he knew what was going to happen all along, but it was like he was strengthening me and preparing me for what was coming, but I didn't know what was coming. And I was praying, what's next, God? What's next? And in his mercy, he didn't reveal what was next.
Yeah.
But when it happened, I was, not to say ready, but my faith was strong. And God has, you know, he's taken me on a journey of learning to trust. I would say in the beginning, my trust was very, it was based on what I expected. And now it's like, I have no idea where God's going to lead me next. But because of what we've been through for the last 2 years, I know that no matter what it is, he's going to be there with me through it. And I can bear it because of what we've been through.
Yes.
And I know that, you know, what he has in store is going to be worth whatever we've had to walk through to get there. I know that 100% now. I did go through a questioning time about a year ago. So a year after he died, I had to grapple with the questions about why.
Yeah.
And I was kind of surprised that I started to have those questions, because I had never struggled with why. I'd never struggled with trusting God or understanding, you know, his ways until then. And realizing the finality of losing my husband and losing all the future plans that we had and all of the what my life was and my identity was, losing that completely and having to start over really made me question why God does some of the things he does and how he works, because in my mind things always make sense. Had always made sense to me before. You know, you make choices, there's consequences, but sometimes things you don't choose happen.
Right.
And this was one of those things.
Right.
And I really had to struggle with the why and the why me, and trying to understand why God allowed this. And God was patient with me through that. And I processed it out and wrote to him and just shared with him all of my complaints and all my questions. And ultimately, I've come out stronger on the other side of, I don't need to understand.
Yeah.
I just know that he's good. And he showed me that he's good, so I can trust him. So I think that was a necessary part of the journey I had to get through. Because in the beginning, I didn't have that. I didn't have that rock solid trust that no matter what, he's good.
Yeah. So
it wasn't experiential yet.
Yeah. So you couldn't ask questions that might make you feel more unstable, but having that consistency of a year of his presence in the midst of it. Yeah. Right? Okay, now I feel safe enough to ask these questions.
Yes.
And, yeah. And then find out it's not about the answer.
No.
It's not about the why. Your trust in Jesus. How would you say that that's different since all of this?
It's experiential versus theoretical. I mean, when you truly have experienced like the worst possible thing you could imagine, and you realize that even losing everything on earth that you care about, that you could never lose the Lord, and that you can never lose the hope of eternity. That makes it all like, it makes it worthwhile, because it makes you see that, you know, he promises that he's going to redeem, you know, all of our things that we've been through are going to be redeemed. He's going to wipe away every tear. And having experienced the feeling of feeling like you've lost everything, but realizing
that's just temporal. That's just what's here and now. No one can ever take away my future and my hope and
Right.
salvation and eternity.
Right.
And those are the things that matter. It makes it so much more real, because I have seemingly lost everything. I've lost my identity. I've lost my future dreams. I've lost my home. I've lost, my family structure. I've lost so many things.
Yeah.
But even that pales in comparison to what's coming.
Yeah.
And I think when things are really good in life and you're really happy and everything's how you want it, you know that there's more, but our focus is more on the here and now and the good things in life, because that's normal. That's human nature, When all that gets stripped away, then you realize that rock solid foundation is still there. Yes. And it's unmovable.
Yes. And that I'm just hearing you say, and I lost my identity. What you thought was your identity.
Yeah.
And comes to find that your identity is a lot more than that role.
Right.
Yeah.
But I thought that God gave me that identity. So it was like this struggle of, God, you called me to be a mom and, a wife and all these things. And now that's gone. And God's like, but that wasn't really your identity. Your identity is where I put you, who I made you. If I lost all my kids today, I would still be who I am.
Yes.
That isn't what makes me who I am.
Yes. Yeah.
So that was a journey. And I think that's why God had me praying for so long of, what do you have for me, God? Because I knew that I was where he put me, but I also knew that that wasn't forever.
Yeah.
And I didn't know where it was leading.
Yeah.
And now I see this is where it was going. And he was trying to show me that, I have you here now, but later down the road, you'll be somewhere else and it'll still be
you.
It'll still be you. Exactly. Yeah. So that's the journey. And that's the testimony, really. It's that, God hasn't changed. His ways are his ways. I'm just starting to understand that his ways are much greater than our ways.
Yeah. And so going back to that question I asked you, where you said you thought you realized a lot later the experience of Jesus personally, how it's distinct, not that it's different, but distinct from your experience of Jesus through his revealing himself through community. And did you want to touch on that at all? Yeah.
Of how he's real to me now.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not so much in the structure of, my church or my friends or, how I volunteer or all of those hats that I've worn that made me feel part of God's body are still important to me.
Yeah.
But the relationship with God, that is really the foundation of my hope that, nothing can shake, is apart from all that. It's, even if all that is stripped away, I know who he is, and I feel known by him, and I feel seen and loved and understood and accepted by him apart from all that. There's been a lot of things that he has used to strip away my reliance on that structure that I've relied on throughout my life. I went through a health thing a year before Ryan got sick, where it began to show me how my faith couldn't be based on what I perceived as my value to God, what value I bring to God by all these things that I do. I got really bad arthritis and tendonitis in my right arm, and it was just horrible pain all the way wrapping around my shoulder and all the way down my right arm. It was numb and burning, and I couldn't move it. And it's still a mild pain, but it's not like it was. Right. And that showed me that, all that I thought I was doing to be valuable to God and show him that I was worthy. I was doing all these things for the church and for the school and helping people and all these things. I couldn't do any of that stuff.
Yeah.
And God really, gave me a word at that time that is not why I love you.
Right.
That isn't why you're special to me. It's you are valuable to me because you're human and because I love you and I died for you. And that began sort of that journey with God where I was praying. Okay, God, you're calling into question my identity. What is it then?
Right.
If it isn't my, value as a mom or as a wife or a volunteer or whatever, like, what is it?
Right.
And yeah, he was just mercifully revealing to me the beginning of where I needed to be. And that's like complete reliance on him.
Yeah. 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 Well, thank you for sharing that, Holly. And if you were just able to say something to someone who doesn't know Jesus, what would you like to say?
Well, Jesus knows you. And he knows, I think, the most inner longings of our heart, and he wants to fulfill those. And he will use, your story to reveal himself to you. He's so kind. He's so gentle. He waits. He just shows himself to you in little glimmers here and there. Sometimes he comes through in a lot more showy way, but usually it's just little whispers throughout your life, and I think if you stop and listen and just ask him, show yourself to me wherever you are, just stop and say, where are you, God? Show yourself to me. I remember one time I felt very alone in my life. I was early 20s. I had sort of backslidden. I think I had been dumped by a boyfriend, and I just felt very my life wasn't going how I wanted. And I remember just crying out to God, God, where are you? And I swear in that moment, he gave me the biggest hug. I just felt this warm hug feeling all over. And it shocked me. I was not expecting that. I was expecting a much more philosophical response. And it was this visceral, really no, I'm here. I'm really here. And so I think that he knows what you need when you need it. And if you seek him with your whole heart, the Bible says he will be found by you. So I love that verse because he's just waiting.
So good. All right. Well, thank you for sharing your Jesus story, Holly, and God bless you and your family.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah.